she had seen an article, this preacher would pay money for snakes. And she was trying to make some money. So she tried to catch some snakes to take for some money.
Welcome to Shuck Beans, a podcast about all things positive in Appalachia. I am Phoenicia Miracle, and I'm the host of Shuck Beans. I created this podcast because I believe that the ancestry and the values and the traditions of Appalachia are important. They need to be preserved, just like Shuck Beans. So if you are interested in the history, the kinship, the deep faith, and the love of the people and the culture of Appalachia, this podcast is for you. And today I am very excited to have a friend and an author on our podcast, Carol Guthrie Heilman, who was born in Bell County, Kentucky, just one county over from where I'm from in Harlan County, Kentucky. And she is the author of 5 books. All 5 were influenced by Appalachia, and I am delighted to have her here today. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, thank you. I'm really honored to be here. My dad was from Harlan. And
okay.
yeah. And after his duty was over in the shipyards, we came back to Kentucky and into Bell County.
And then you went on to become a Kentucky Wildcat.
Oh, yes, I did. Right.
Right. And you married a fellow Kentuckian?
I did. And he was born in the western part of the state on a farm. I was born, of course, in Alabama, but lived most of my life, growing up life, in Bell County, Kentucky. And when the mines started closing down in 1958, we had no choice but to move. And so my family moved to Frankfort, Kentucky. And my dad went into business with my uncle, who owned a dry cleaners. And my husband, Bob, his family left the farm and moved to Frankfort. And his dad got a job with the Department of Agriculture in Frankfort and tested cattle, of all things. And so we were both in Frankfort, met in high school, and that's our first date was a church hayride.
Well, let's jump in to your books now. And I wanted to ask you about your parents' influence, and especially about one of the physical images that I remember reading about in your most recent book, which is Becoming Hattie Mae. And that is your dad's meal bucket.
Oh, yes, the dinner bucket. We called it the dinner bucket because dinner was, of course, the middle meal. Supper was last. So this was a dinner. This was a lunch. Well, people would call it lunch, but we called it dinner. And this is the bottom part. And this this held the water to drink. And the middle part was the bologna sandwich, maybe moon pie, if they were lucky, cornbread, leftover sweet potatoes, anything, and then the lid went on top of it all to hold everything together. And my daddy always said that in the mines, if you didn't keep the lid on tight and keep a rock on top of that the rats would smell your food and try to get your food. I did a lot of research, because I couldn't remember everything that I grew up with. And the era that I wrote about was before my time in the late 20s. So, and I grew up in late 40s, 50s, that sort of thing. But I can't think what physical image it would be, unless it would be maybe the snake handling, the churches, and the snakes and everything. I never went to a service, but I did find a book on snake handling, And I heard rumors growing up, of course, of these churches that did practice the snakes. And I think they took the scripture literally when God promised to take care of them from harmful, poisonous snakes and even poison. That God promised that He would take care of them, but I think instead of literally, He meant He would keep them from those hard times, the evil in the world. But some of the churches took it literally, and so they thought, okay, we can prove that we have faith if we handle these snakes and we don't get bitten. That's
So
in my book.
how did you use snake handling in your book?
Well, Hattie Mae goes to a service because she had seen an article in a old newspaper that this preacher would pay money for snakes. And actually, I found an article in a newspaper that said that very same thing, that if you could catch a snake and bring it to this particular man, he would pay you for them. So she was trying to make some money. So she tried to catch some snakes to take for some money.
So she was actually, if I recall having read Becoming Hattie Mae, she
Uh-huh.
was actually trying to make some money because she wanted her education.
Well, yes, and she even uh, really even she. I don't know that she had education in mind so much that she had the need to leave
Mm, okay.
the aversion.
Right.
And she knew that she couldn't make it in the world without a penny in her pocket, you know. So that's why she was trying to make some money.
Well, that is a very interesting story, and I also did not see an article in the newspaper, but I have definitely heard from family about people who did not handle snakes, but made money by supplying
Hmm.
the snakes. So that's very interesting that you included that as a way that she made money. I want to refer back to your website. And you have a page at carolheilman.com, which we'll post when our podcast is over. But you have a page there dedicated to your dad. And we've talked about him working in the mines and you being there in the mine camps in Bell County. But you referenced the fact that he was a breaker boy. And in Becoming Hattie Mae, there is significant information about the role of the breaker boy because Hattie Mae's brother, she's concerned that and his mother's concerned that he's going to get sent to the mines as a breaker boy. I never heard of that until I met you and read your book. So, what was a breaker boy?
Okay, well, it really says what he is. He breaks the lumps of coal in smaller pieces because some of it is not. It's not all solid coal. Some of
Mm,
it needs to be thrown away. It's not. It's not worth anything, like the slate, that they discard.
okay.
So they break the coal up, and then they divide it into, if it's the coal, actually the coal pieces, they divide it into the small, the medium, and the large pieces. Before it goes down the different chutes into the coal cars. So and the discarded is put aside for which is thrown into the slate heap, which is grows and grows because there's a lot of the discarded part, and the slate also it grows so much and becomes so combustible. It, it
Okay.
it can catch fire on its own, and and they can't really put it out. It just burns.
Well, that's very interesting. I think that people from Appalachia know the importance of coal mining, but some of these unique roles have almost been lost in history. And
Mm.
so you think about yeah, the dinner bucket, you've got the breaker boy, and then you also wrote that your father played a role in the mines when he was young, when he went early in the morning to make sure that there was no gas in the tunnel. That
Right.
sounds like a very dangerous role. Do you recall what he said about that?
No, I don't. And since he's been gone, of course, you always wish you had asked
Right.
more questions.
Hmm.
Yeah, they sent most of the boys in with I don't know if they actually had a canary with them or if they had just their light on their helmet or
Right.
their. They didn't really wear helmets back then. It was just a hat with a light. But if the light indicated, if it flickered like it was going to go out, or maybe they could smell it. I'm not sure. And if the tunnel seemed clear, they marked with a chalk on a column that the date and the time. Then it was clear that they felt it was okay for the rest of them to come in. So,
Well, now that I understand that, having read your website, I understand more the character of the mother in becoming Hattie Mae, who so desperately did not want her young son to end up being a breaker boy or
right.
playing another dangerous role. So maybe that's a good transition into that most recent book, Becoming Hattie Mae. I know that's not your first book, but in that most, I don't want to turn to my notes here. In that most recent book, you also talk about something else that people from Appalachia are familiar with, and that is that Hattie Mae and her family owned a house, but she learned that they did not own their mineral rights. What was
Right.
that about?
Okay. Well, they Hattie Mae's family didn't realize it at the time that they didn't own the land if something more valuable that was found underneath, the mining company could take it. And that happened quite often. Now, Hattie Mae's family did not live in the camp, so their house
Right. That's
was
right.
not owned, wasn't owned by the coal company like the camp houses. But so they purchased their house, not knowing that they didn't really own the land. If the coal company found something of value, they could take it.
Well, in my research of ancestry and history, it is amazing to come across pages and pages in Bell County, where you grew up, of quitclaim deeds,
Uh,
where suddenly people realized there was a dispute about the land that they lived on.
uh,
And a lot of that happened in the early 1900s. And you set your book in the 1920s, I believe you said.
right.
So, very, very apropos to that time, mainly made over to Charles Davis, who was ultimately the founder of Kentania. And so, when I read that in your novel that is, set there in Bell County or set in that region, I thought, wow, I haven't ever read. I've read real life stories, but I haven't ever read where this issue is problematic for a family. And it hangs over the head of Hattie Mae. She
Yeah.
worries about that issue a lot in her book. So let me transition now to your writing of Becoming Hattie Mae.
Okay.
When did you begin that book?
Oh, goodness. It's been in my mind and close to my heart for years. And then I finally started writing it. But I think I thought about it and pondered and considered for years. And I would write a scene here and there that, just wouldn't leave me alone. And until actually sat down to write the book, it was a while. Yeah.
And you include the mission school in that book.
Yes.
And one of this, I think we've also called them settlement schools.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the role of that school? Because you pointed out she was going there for more than to get an education. She wanted to leave home, but ultimately she wanted to do something to help the people in her community.
Right. Right. Well, Redbird Mission is actually a place in Bell County, and it's really interesting. Our coal camp was near the end of the road, almost the end. There might have been one other settlement beyond us, and then further on was Redbird Mission. We never did go there because we were always headed the other direction to go into town. So, but back in my day, and even before, Redbird Mission was a place for the mountain children to go to be educated. And their motto over the door, which is there still, is enter to learn, leave to serve. So, and they still serve the mountain people. I'm not positive how much they educate they may still teach and educate the young people. I'll have to look into that. But I do know that they help the people as far as food and clothing and legal assistance and all kinds of things, and probably education too. Just basic education.
Right, right. Right. I did a little research on them as well because I know they are also important, am I right, to the book you're working on right now?
Very much. Yes.
Yeah, very important. And I believe they are still educating not only children from the mountains, but also from other areas that might be high risk. But Becoming Hattie Mae was not your first book, and Hattie Mae was not your first character. I believe it's Agnes Hopper.
Oh, yes, Agnes Hopper. She developed into 3 books.
Yes.
And she was really, her spirit, I think, was modeled after my mother, because mother was the spunky, outspoken woman who always wanted to make things right. And that was Agnes. So, and Hopper is my mother's maiden name.
Okay.
So that's how that came about. Agnes, I just like the name Agnes, but Hopper is my mother's maiden name. So,
And did you set those books in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina? Is that right?
yeah, well, yes, but in a small town.
Okay.
And, yes, in a retirement home, mostly, of a small town.
And you and I were texting, and we were talking about the fact that you really focused on issues that were relevant to older people.
Right.
And Agnes had left her comfortable life and took on some real challenges. So, what were some of those challenges that you talked about in those books?
Well, first of all, I've always felt like that very often we don't listen to older people. We just kind of disregard what they're saying. And we do the same thing with children. Children and old people, we don't really, sometimes we don't have them in high regard. But anyway, Agnes, when she gets to, well, first of all, she being a lot like my mother, her daughter was a lot like I am.
Okay.
And the two were like oil and water, uh, as my mother and I were, because mother was a force to deal with, and I was not. I was not wanting to be seen. I was the one. Well, mother thought in my eyes, that I could do nothing right. My daddy thought I could do nothing wrong. So I
Wow.
had, I had the footprints. but, but anyway, my mother did have a lot of wonderful qualities. And one of her great qualities was taking charge and speaking up for people. So I tried to give Agnes that voice of speaking up for her friends who really had no voice in their situations. They were in this retirement home.
Hmm.
They were being over medicated. They were being, abused in that, especially in that way.
Right.
And Agnes exposes all of the things that are going wrong in that home. She didn't go there with that intent. She didn't want to be there. She was not happy there. But when she found out that the people there were not being treated like they should have been, she decided she couldn't leave. She had to stand up for them. So that's how that started.
So you've got the trilogy with Agnes Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Hattie Mae in your most recent book, Becoming Hattie Mae. And in all of these books, you have a strong female character.
Right.
And I believe, based on the way I grew up, Appalachia is a matriarchal society.
Right.
My mother had great influence over what happened in our lives, even though my dad, made a living
Right.
and was really, I guess you would say, the head of the house in a lot of ways. But if he didn't want something to be done, we always went to mom. And so I just sort of
Yeah.
use that as the introduction to say, you've got these strong female characters in your books. How did Appalachia influence those qualities in those women?
Well, I'm not sure if it was Appalachia or if it was just how my background, how I grew up with a
Ah,
strong mother, and then I have observed women, older women, not having a voice, and young women like Hattie not having a voice,
mm.
and I wanted to give them a voice to speak up, and they did.
Well, you have certainly done so through Hattie Mae, and then she goes on to be a very important person in her community. And Agnes went on to make a very big difference there in the retirement center. And your next book that you're working on right now, I think is very exciting. It's going to focus, if I may say, on the Redbird mission. Is that correct?
It's going to start there
Mm-hmm.
in the book, but it's going to go beyond that. So,
Okay.
and where it goes, I have some ideas, but they're not on paper yet.
Well, that's a good transition, though, to you as a writer. Carol, I've heard you say you didn't start writing until you were in your 50s. And once you started, you just knew you had to write. And so what words of encouragement would you have for any aspiring writers who may come across this podcast?
Well, the first thing I would say is to write what's on your heart, to write what makes a difference, what matters to you. It has to
Hmm.
matter. And I know I've always heard just them say write what you know, but we don't know everything. Research is so important. And if you want to write, just do it and join a writers group. And if you don't have one, start one. That's what I did when we lived in North Carolina. Uh, we were in a wonderful community, but there was no writers group that I knew of that I could join. So, and I knew that this lady, a friend of mine, was a writer for the newspaper, the local newspaper. And so she was in my church, and I was terrified to approach her. I thought, here's this big time writer. But I did, and I said, would you be interested coming with me and beginning a writers group? And she jumped at the chance, and so it began from there. And those the ladies that formed that writers group are still writer friends today. And the local writers group on Daniel Island at the library, they're just invaluable. Their advice and their critiques, and writers are always kind to each other and helpful. And it just we can't. Writing is a lonely profession
Yes.
sometimes, but
Yes.
we cannot do it all alone. We need support.
Well, thank you. That is wonderful advice. And we're about to wrap up, but I would like to end the podcast with a story that I heard you tell, I believe, at our writers group. And you talked about Saturday night in the coal mine camp. And can you describe what you witnessed there as a child? Because sometimes on YouTube or other places, the coal mine camps and that region really get a bad rap. And you had a beautiful story to tell about the community and how they came together on Saturdays.
Okay. Well, I'll tell the short version because it's a long
Okay.
story.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was, let's see, I guess it was in the 50s, and no one had television. Is that the story you're thinking of?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
okay, so a group of daddies, minor friends, and their wives, they got together and they decided that if they had a little television to hook up to the main power source on top of the mountain, they could probably get a picture on the television. So they would meet down in back of the commissary, and my sister and I, they wouldn't let the children go, but the adults gathered, and they took this television and whatever else they needed to hook it up, and climbed the mountain to the very top where the entrance to the mines was. That's where
Okay.
the major power source was. And so they would go up there at night and hook it up and watch it until it signed off and carry the television back down. And the next Saturday night, they would do the same thing. And then someone thought, well, why can't we just run the cable down the mountain from that power source
Okay.
into the commissary and see if that works? So they did, and it did. So on Saturday night, everyone would come to the commissary to watch the television. That would mother or daddy would set it up on the meat counter, and I mean, we would watch anything that appeared, probably a boxing match or something. Didn't matter.
So right. So when they brought it down to the commissary, you were able to go. Is that what I understand you to
Yes,
say?
yes.
Yes. Okay.
Go and mother, she was the manager of the commissary, and very efficient. She was all business, and so she would fix sandwiches to sell
Oh, okay.
because everybody was hungry. And so she was busy making sandwiches and selling whatever they wanted to drink or eat. No,
Well,
yeah,
thank you for sharing that. I love that story because in my mind, I can just see the trail of people, headed up to the mouth,
yeah.
open at the mouth of the mine and headed on up the mountain. Thank you very much. And Carol, thank you so much for being a guest today. If you are listening and you would like to purchase one of Carol's books, all of them are out on Amazon. All of her books, the most recent one, which she's holding up there, Becoming Hattie May, is fabulous. It's the one that I've most recently read. And also, Carol has a website, carolheilman.com. That's CarolHeilman. Heilman. Also, I want to ask that you subscribe and like Shuck Beans on Facebook or YouTube. Also, that you subscribe wherever you listen regularly. This is a new podcast about all things positive in Appalachia, and so we're building our audience, which we can only do through you. Thank you again, and thank you, Carol. We will be watching and waiting for your next book that's set at the Redbird Mission, and I just look forward to hearing that the Shuck Beans audience has really enjoyed your books and has given them great reviews and has connected with you on your Facebook channel as well. Thank you so much.